Robert Rosenthal of IlliniBoard.com here now for our Week 3 installment of Sunday No Huddle. Now, back at Media Day, did you think we'd be standing here today talking about a 3-0 Illinois team?
You know, I was thinking this when we heard the stat that first time 3-0 since 2011. The first year I did this on Sunday nights was 2013. So I've never stood here and talked about a 3-0 team. It's crazy to think that, but there's always that early season loss. Yeah, not this year. It's an impressive start.
And not only that, but a ranked start. Illinois number 24 in this week's AP poll. Now, does that excite you or does that make you nervous?
As a fan, it makes you nervous.
Yes.
I think every fan thinks about those games where you got ranked and everybody started feeling pretty good. And then, I mean, especially when you're going on the road, you're playing a ranked team this week. That first road game is always difficult. Everything feels so off and so weird. And wait, this isn't the turf we normally play on, and these aren't the environments I'm used to being around. And so that's the thing that's really going to, be the test this week is 3 games at home, 3 wins, 1 over a pretty good Kansas team. Now what? What can you do on the road?
Let's talk about Saturday's game. It was a decent crowd for that early start. I mean, I assume you were there.
Yes.
I haven't actually formally asked, but knowing you,
I was there. Yes, 100%.
Strong performance from this team to a 30-9 win. That energy shift in halftime really stands out to me. What do you think changed in the locker room for this team?
Yeah, it seemed like there's always that letdown game after a big, a night game, sold out crowd against Kansas. You beat them. You beat a ranked team. The next game always feels like that. Wait, this is a little more difficult, and especially with the heat on the field. I mean, you were down there. You know what it was like in that sun. The heat and everything else, it just feels a little different. The emotion's not there. There's struggles. There's confusion, this type of thing. So that's what the first half was. But it was good to see them, that first drive of the second half is this decision of like, look, we can move the ball against these guys. We can throw it. We can do this. And, a really quick drive to score and, put the game fairly out of reach at that point.
Yeah. For the second week in a row, we're standing here talking about special teams.
Yep.
Ethan Machowski's 59-yard field goal, his first ever collegiate field goal, which I didn't even realize at the time, set a new program record. What do you think's in the water in the special teams room?
It's crazy. It reminds fans of there was this setup 20 years ago. So there was a game against Ohio State in 2002 when Illinois took Ohio State to overtime, lost in overtime to an Ohio State team that went on to win the title.
Here or there?
It was here, went to overtime, and they had a similar guy who comes in to kick the long field goals back then. His name was John Gochman. So the kicker was Peter Christofalakis. He handled all the kicks, but these super long ones, this guy just had a big leg, and it's great to have that weapon in the arsenal. Machowski also does kickoffs now. That allows them. We talked about Caleb Griffin off camera earlier. Caleb struggled with kickoffs once he hurt himself during one season, and they were like, man, we really like to keep his leg fresh for field goals and have somebody else handle the kickoffs, and they went through a couple kickers that year trying that. So it's really good to have that kicker with a really big leg who can come in and hit that thing would have been good from almost 70. I mean, yes, there was a little wind. It was a swirling wind, and it was definitely a south wind at the time when he kicked that, but still. That thing almost hit the net, hit the chair at the base of the net. It was impressive.
It's the furthest I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I would say that.
It has to be.
Yes. I've seen in practice where
but in gameplay.
Yes, in Camp Rantoul, the kickers would always they're done with their portion of practice. They would go over to field 3 and can I kick a 75-yarder with this wind? Yes, exactly. So I've seen that, but in a game, yeah, I've never seen a 59-yarder.
No, absolutely.
Not even in the NFL.
No. Luke Altmaier still proving himself to be Mr. Consistency. 65% completions this week, 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. So what does a road test like this present to him?
Yeah, I think, last year was 13 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And I think fans will remember in the third game last year, he threw 4 interceptions against Penn State, and the game was over quickly. So for him to be 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions so far, that's impressive. That's one point of emphasis in this offseason with him is just can't make those mistakes. And if you remember that one throw, I believe that was on his mind. It was a third down throw, third quarter or fourth quarter, where he basically half spiked the ball. He tried to stop his arm because he saw a defensive back creeping on the ball. He has it in his head look, this game is in hand. The only thing that can push this game out of hand, I'm sure these coaches are on him about that, is to throw a pick six here, to make a mistake and this and that. So if it means throwing the ball into the ground if you have to, and then you have to punt, that's fine, because it's a lot better than turning the ball over down at this end.
You know, because as someone who wasn't here last year, he just seems so locked in on the mental side of things.
Yes.
And that's something that I have seen firsthand with quarterbacks that makes just insane differences. You can do all the workouts, all the reps, but changing the mentality is huge.
Yeah, a lot of quarterbacks will talk about, like, the first 6 games, it's just a blur of, like, gosh, I have to make so many decisions and so many reads and that type of thing. So I do think it helped him at the end of last season. You know, he got injured, he got the concussion. So, you know, John Paddock had to come in. Then he played so well, Paddock started the last 3 games.
Right.
You know, to go through what he went through, an up and down season, that one game with 4 interceptions, and then over here he has these great games. For him to go through those ups and downs and then have to watch for 3 games was probably pretty helpful, because he's now pretty locked in. He talked about it all off season, that, like, hey, look, this was helpful for me. This was a moment where I could sit there and watch, and I prepared differently and everything else. And you know, so far so good through 3 games.
Yeah. It's a big one on deck for the first road test for this Illinois team. They go to number 22, Nebraska, setting up a top 25 matchup. Pretty exciting. I've never been to Lincoln. What kind of environment is in store for this team and for any fans who may be making the trip?
I always tell people it'll be the nicest crowd you ever sit with. The last time I was there was a guy and his wife who approached me and my buddies after the game to say, look, we take a photo with opposing fans at every game. Can we take a photo with you guys? So we took a photo with them. They're congratulating us on the Illinois win and all this. They are Nebraska nice. They are very nice. Them. Yes, exactly. And so they're, you know, it's kind of a fun place to. They enjoy that reputation that they're the crowd that welcomes visiting fans and isn't sitting there yelling at them all game. And so they enjoy that. So it's a fun place to watch a game. But it is also, you know, if you think Memorial Stadium was crowded in Champaign for the Kansas game, the first sellout in a long time, and the lines to get in and concessions and everything else, is a whole other ball game in Lincoln. You know, they've just added on and added on and added on to the stadium, and rows going higher and higher. And so some of those hallways, some of those waits for restrooms, it is a big-time college football environment where you just know there's going to be a line for every single thing you do. But yeah, it's going to be an intimidating environment especially for the offense to have to function against that much noise.
What about the defense? Really strong through 3 games rather. Can they shut down Dylan Raiola and his complete arsenal of an offense?
I think that's the hope for Illinois fans, because you have a true freshman quarterback.
Right.
Nebraska fans know he's going to have that game soon of, you know, is it going to come in this game? Is it going to come when they play Ohio State? Who knows? But freshmen are always going to have that freshman game. I think the Illinois defense is hoping, look, we're opportunistic, and, you know, Xavier Scott has 3 interceptions already. Miles Scott has 2 interceptions. I've got a buddy who's trying to push the Scott Air Force Base.
I saw that. I like that.
Yes, that's right. I grew up in the Metro East, so you know, I went to high school with several kids who were, you know, base kids that went to their parents worked at Scott Air Force Base. So, it's a good matchup. The hope for Illinois fans is that, hey, these guys have been very opportunistic, much like the 2022 defense. You got a freshman quarterback who hasn't had that game yet. Maybe it happens under the lights on Friday night.
Any other keys to this game for an Illinois team who is hungry and has high standards?
I think the biggest issue is, you know, turnover margin. Illinois is top 5 nationally so far. When you go on the road, the turnovers just seem to happen. The fumbles fall out. The interceptions, the tips all seem to end up in somebody's arms. So I think limiting turnovers is the key to everything. Illinois has this long history of the first road game where it doesn't go very well. I mean, even the 2022 team went on the road the first time, lost to a 4-8 Indiana team. You know, it's just this history of it's hard to go on the road and win, especially the first time you're doing it. And that's what this game's going to be.
Robert, always great to talk ball with you. Coming up after this, the Bears' first road test as well of the regular season.